Hi, I'm Clara Morgan. I used to believe that if I stayed quiet, I could protect the peace. But the night my daughter was slapped to the floor in front of 200 guests changed everything. That slap didn't just shatter her innocence, it tore off every mask my family had ever worn. If you saw me at the store or passing by at school pickup, you'd think I had a pretty ordinary life. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment tucked in the quieter side of Pasadena. The kind of place where the walls creak at night and the hallway light flickers, but it's home. My daughter Ivy is 10, a sweet, curious soul with freckles like stardust and an old soul kind of wisdom. She has this way of watching the world like she's waiting for it to explain itself. Her father, my husband Daniel, passed away 3 years ago. A car crash. One minute he was promising he'd grab takeout on the way home, and the next, I was identifying his body with trembling hands. Just like that, I was a widow at 32. Since then, it's just been Ivy and me, and I've done everything to keep our little world stable. I work from home as a freelance designer. I make print art, greeting cards, logos, whatever pays the bills. Ivy does homework on the couch while I draft illustrations late into the night. We had peace, a quiet, predictable rhythm, until the invitation arrived. It came in a thick, cream-coloured envelope, fancy like something out of a bridal magazine. Embossed letters, gold trim. It smelled faintly like roses and regret. Inside was a formal invitation. You are cordially invited to the engagement celebration of Juliana Morgan and Grant Whitmore. Location, the Ivory Sky Lounge. Dress code, black tie formal. No handwritten note. No, hope you can come, or we'd love to see Ivy. Just cold, elegant text from a sister who hadn't called in over a year. Juliana, my younger sister, the family favourite. Picture perfect, camera ready, a rising influencer with 1.9 million followers who shared skincare routines and curated joy like a full-time job. Our parents, Barbara and Charles Morgan, treated her like a porcelain heirloom, displayed, adored, never questioned. Me, I was the misstep, the one who married an art teacher instead of a lawyer, the one who dropped out of med school to chase art and made their holiday cards instead of headlines. When the envelope came, Ivy noticed it first. She spun in the kitchen, socks sliding across the linoleum floor. Her eyes lit up like fireflies when she saw the gold seal. "Is that from Grandma?" she asked, breathless. I hesitated. "It's from your Aunt Juliana. She's getting engaged." Her eyes widened. "Are we invited?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to rip that paper in half and toss it in the sink. But Ivy's eyes so full of hope, it broke something in me. "Yes," I said softly, "we are." I didn't know then how that one word would unravel everything. Over the next few days, Ivy buzzed with excitement. She picked out her lavender recital dress with tiny white daisies stitched along the hem. She twirled in the mirror, holding her stuffed fox in one hand. "Do you think Aunt Juliana will like this?" she asked. I smiled. "She'll love it." What I didn't say was if she even notices. The night of the party. Los Angeles was glowing in a late summer haze. We took the elevator up to the rooftop venue, and the moment those doors opened, the air changed. The Sky Lounge was all soft jazz, glittering glass, and champagne flutes. People floated through the room in designer gowns and expensive cologne, all smiles and sparkling lies. As we stepped in, I felt it the shift. Heads turned, conversations paused just a beat too long. Ivy clutched my hand tighter. Then I saw her, my mother Barbara, sweeping across the floor in a navy gown, her face tight and polished. She offered a curt nod in my direction, and then turned sharply to Ivy. "This is an adult event," she hissed under her breath. "You shouldn't have brought her." Before I could reply, she placed a firm hand on Ivy's shoulder and nudged her aside. Not hard enough to call attention, but enough to send a message. Ivy wobbled. Her little hands clutched a glass of red punch she had just been handed. One step back, a stumble, and then, in slow motion, it happened. The punch flew from her hand. A crimson arc in midair, it landed squarely on Juliana's ivory designer gown. A gasp rippled across the rooftop. Juliana froze. Her eyes locked on the spreading stain like she'd been shot. The room went silent, then sharper than air, she shouted. You stupid little brat. Do you know what you've done? Before anyone could move, before I could blink, her hand came down across Ivy's cheek. A slap that echoed through marble and silence. My daughter collapsed into sobs on the floor, and nobody moved. Nobody stopped her. I ran to her, scooped her into my arms. Her cheeks were red, her eyes wild with shame and confusion. "What is wrong with you?" I screamed. But before Juliana could answer, Barbara stepped between us. "You never should have come," she snapped. Charles, my father, appeared behind her like a ghost. "Take your daughter and go." Security was called. 2 men in black suits approached us like we were shoplifters, not family. Ivy buried her face in my neck as they escorted us through the crowd. Behind us, phones clicked, glasses clinked. A few whispered apologies came from the shadows, but no one stepped forward. I turned once, just once, and locked eyes with someone I hadn't seen in years. A friend from college, Maya. Her phone was in her hand camera, still rolling. And for the first time, I felt the sting of something new. Not shame, fury. That night, I sat at the edge of Ivy's bed while she cried herself to sleep, a red imprint blooming on her cheek. I held an ice pack in trembling hands. The only light in the room came from the street lamp outside our window, casting gold shadows on our chipped bookshelf and crooked photo frames. How did it come to this? How did I let them hurt her? My phone buzzed. "Maya." "Hey, I saw you. I recorded the whole thing. I couldn't just stand there. Do you want me to send it?" I stared at the screen, then typed yes. What came next played like a horror short film. The punch, the slap, the gasps, the stillness, my parents' cold commands, Ivy's sobs. It was all there, undeniable. I didn't sleep. I watched the video again, and again. And then I walked to the couch where Ivy lay curled up, her stuffed fox still clutched to her chest. She opened her eyes slowly. "Mummy," she whispered. "I'm here, baby." She sat up. Her voice was small but steady. "Was it my fault?" "No," I said firm and clear. "None of this was your fault." "I didn't mean to ruin anything," she murmured. "I just wanted to be part of the family." And then she did something I'll never forget. She took my phone, opened the video, sat cross-legged on the floor and hit record. Her voice, calm, quiet, but full of something deeper than most adults carry. "My name is Ivy. I'm 10. Last night I went to my Aunt Juliana's party. I spilled a drink by accident. She hit me. Then they kicked us out. That was it. No drama. No exaggeration. Just truth. Raw, unfiltered, real. And in that moment I realized this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. The next morning the sun streamed through the blinds like nothing had changed, like the world didn't care that a 10-year-old girl had been publicly humiliated just hours before. Ivy was still asleep on the couch, her face peaceful for once, one hand gripping the ear of her worn-out fox plush. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the steam rising from my mug of black coffee, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was angry, focused, awake. I sat down at the table, opened my laptop, and typed, "Child assault lawyer near me." The words felt foreign on my tongue. Me, a legal case. I had never stepped foot in a courtroom before. But now I had evidence. I had a voice. More importantly, I had Ivy. By noon, I was sitting across from Clara, a child advocacy attorney recommended by Maya. Her office was warm but no nonsense, decorated with muted paintings and a single shelf of well-used law books. She listened without interrupting as I told her what happened. Then I showed her the video. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. And when the slap echoed through the room from my phone's tiny speakers, she simply paused, set the phone down and said, "We're filing charges." I blinked. "We are..." "Yes," she said, "physical assault on a minor, emotional endangerment and neglect. We'll file against Juliana for the assault itself and against Barbara and Charles for failing to intervene and subsequently forcing you out. It's clear-cut. You have the video, you have the child's statement, and it's public." Her words were sharp, precise, surgical. I nodded, stunned. "Okay." Carla leaned forward, her voice low and calm. "Clara, this is no longer just about your family. This is about your child, about every child who's ever been hurt and told to smile through it. You're not just reacting, you're protecting. Let's get to work. That night, I sat Ivy down on the bed and explained what we were doing. I kept my voice gentle but firm. This isn't just about punishing them, I told her. It's about making sure they can't hurt you or anyone else ever again. She was quiet for a moment, playing with the frayed hem of her sleeve. Then she looked up and asked, "Are we going to win?" "We already did," I said softly, "the moment you told the truth." The next day, Clara filed an emergency restraining order against Juliana, Barbara, and Charles. They were legally barred from contacting Ivy or coming within 500 feet of our homeschool or activities. We submitted the video as evidence and included Ivy's unedited recording as a victim statement. Within hours, we received a call from a child welfare liaison assigned by the court. "I just want to come by," she said, "not because we doubt you, but because we want to verify that Ivy is safe and supported, that she has someone standing up for her." I looked across the room at Ivy, who was colouring foxes in superhero capes at the kitchen table. I smiled, even though my throat felt tight. "She does," I said. "She really does." A few nights later, Maya called again. "Ivy's video," she began, hesitant. "Would you consider letting me share it?" I paused. My instinct was to protect Ivy at all costs. I didn't want her face splashed across the internet turned into a meme or a moment. But then I rewatched her clip. The honesty, the tremble, the quiet power. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. "Yes," I said. No edits, no background music, no drama, just her voice, just what happened. Maya posted the video that evening. A simple clip Ivy's voice, her words, the uncut footage of the party, the slap, my scream, the security escort, the silence of 200 guests who said nothing. No filters, no sparkles, just raw truths. By morning, it had 300,000 views. By lunch, it had gone viral. Justice for Ivy was trending on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Parenting advocates reposted it. Domestic abuse activists weighed in. Even a few celebrities' names I never thought I'd see shared the clip. "She's a child," one tweet read. "There is no excuse. Not ever." Another, "Where were the adults? Why did nobody stop it?" And again, one phrase repeated like a drumbeat, "Ivy, we believe you." Juliana couldn't ignore it. She tried to respond 2 days later with a video of her own. It was everything you'd expect. Soft piano music, teary eyes, perfectly framed in natural lighting, mascara artfully smudged. "I'm deeply sorry," she said, "for how things looked that night. I was under immense emotional stress. There was a misunderstanding." She never said Ivy's name. She never admitted to the slap. Instead, she hinted that the footage was manipulated, that her niece may have been coached, and that some people were exploiting a private family matter to gain attention. I nearly threw my phone across the room. Ivy, who had been playing quietly nearby, looked up and said, "She's lying." "I know," I said, "but it's not working." Her comment section erupted. She hit a child. On video. "And you're the victim. Save the fake tears. The internet has receipts. Ivy's 10. She didn't choreograph this. You did." Her followers plummeted. Brands pulled out. A makeup launch was cancelled. A fashion collab was paused indefinitely. Sponsors issued statements. "We do not condone violence against children." Her perfect image cracked in real time, and she couldn't patch it back together. And yet, I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. For once, the storm wasn't on our side of the glass. 3 nights later, I heard a knock at our door just after sunset. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the peephole, and my heart paused. It was Grant, Juliana's fiancé. Well, maybe not anymore. He looked exhausted. Same grey suit from the party, now wrinkled and sagging. His tie loosened, his eyes downcast. I opened the door slowly. "Hi," he said, "can I talk to you?" I nodded. He stepped inside hesitant, like a guest in a stranger's home. Ivy peeked out from the hallway, her stuffed fox clutched to her chest. "I saw the video," he said, "and I needed to say, I'm sorry." He knelt down in front of Ivy. "What happened to you wasn't okay," he said gently, "and I didn't do anything when I should have. You were really brave." Ivy looked at him, then nodded. A small, quiet forgiveness. He stood and turned to me. I didn't want to believe it, he admitted. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. He pulled out his phone, opened a folder of emails. Juliana was planning a $500,000 brand deal for wedding content, he said. She was negotiating it behind my back. There were messages between her and her PR team. She made it clear after the deal was done she was pushing for a prenup. Then she'd move on. My stomach turned. She never loved me, he said, just the image of me. Then came the final blow. I ended it this morning, called it all off, told her mother. I pulled all the contracts. The wedding's done. Ivy, from the doorway, whispered, "So, you're not marrying Aunt Juliana?" Grant smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart, I'm not." He turned back to me. "You were right, about all of them. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it." And then he left. And for the first time in years, someone had stood beside me, not out of obligation, but because it was right. 2 days later, an email arrived. Subject line, urgent. It was from Charles. "We need to talk. This has gone too far. A private resolution meeting has been scheduled. Attendance is expected. No apology. No ownership. Just the same expectation that had shaped my entire childhood. You will do what we say." I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Clara. She responded with a single sentence, "If you go, don't go alone." I took her advice. I left Ivy with a trusted neighbour, Eleanor Daniel's mother, who had quietly become a steady presence in our lives, and I went to the meeting. Calm, clear, prepared. It was held at a private office space in Beverly Hills. Expensive, neutral, sterile. Just like their version of love. Juliana sat in oversized sunglasses, arms crossed like armour. Barbara wore cream silk and that forced softness that always made me uneasy. Charles didn't look up. I sat across from them. I didn't flinch. Juliana spoke first. "You've embarrassed this family beyond belief." I said nothing. "You let your daughter post lies online." "They weren't lies," I said simply. Barbara sighed. "This could have been handled privately like adults." "You mean buried?" I replied. "You're always so dramatic," she snapped. "You're doing this to make us look bad." I leaned forward steady. "No, you made yourselves look bad." And then he walked in. Grant. He stood at the head of the table, a folder in his hands. "I've heard enough," he said. He looked at Juliana cold and direct. "You used me. You used your niece. You used this whole thing to build a brand. I'm done." He dropped the folder on the table. "These are the formal terminations. Every business deal, every collab, every dollar." Juliana stared at him, open-mouthed. Charles tried to interject. "Let's not make a scene." "You already did," Grant cut in. As I stood to leave, Juliana shouted, "You always wanted this, didn't you? To ruin me." I paused at the door, turned and said the only truth that mattered. "No, I wanted you to love us. But since that was too hard, at least now we're free." The next morning, I awoke to sunlight streaming through the blinds, not the kind that blinds you with its indifference, but the kind that quietly says you made it. Ivy was still curled up under her fox blanket, one arm stretched over her head, her face peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up bracing myself for an emotional ambush. The apartment felt different too. Not just like a place to survive in, it felt like a place we could live. That afternoon, I made myself a second cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The freelance gigs were steady, but something had shifted in me. I didn't want just to stay afloat anymore. I wanted to create something that mattered. That's when the idea came. I opened my sketch pad and began to draw. Simple, clean lines, a mother holding a child's hand, a fox wrapped in a cape, a little girl with freckles staring up at a star-filled sky, art that told stories, art that spoke when words couldn't. By nightfall, I had mapped out the beginnings of something new. A small online shop prints posters, cards and kits for single mothers and kids like Ivy. Empowering messages, gentle strength, pieces of our truth wrapped in colour and light. I called it Seeb's Eye Studio, Clara plus Ivy, us. Within a week, I'd uploaded a collection of designs to a simple Etsy storefront. Ivy helped pick out the names Brave Fox, Safe, Space Stars, Know Your Name. She even doodled a set of animals wearing superhero costumes that we turned into a sticker pack. "Do you think other kids will like them?" she asked, holding one up to the light. "I think they'll love them," I said. And they did. By the end of the month, we had 10,000 followers on Instagram. Parenting blogs reposted our prints. Orders came in steadily. A children's mental health nonprofit even reached out to collaborate on a campaign using Ivy's artwork. We started packing orders at night side by side at the table. Ivy would fold tissue paper, hand me the thank you notes, and place a sticker on each package. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were building something. Eleanor, my late husband's mother, checked in often, dropping off groceries, asking about orders, helping Ivy with homework. She wasn't just a grandma anymore. She had become our anchor. Soft-spoken, but unshakable. "You're doing good, Clara," she told me one night as we sipped tea in the living room. "Your boy would be proud." I didn't cry, not this time. I just nodded and whispered, "I hope so." Maya became a regular visitor too, bringing cookies and updates from the online world we had quietly stepped away from. Juliana tried to do damage control, posting a second video, then a third, each one more forced than the last. Tearful apologies wrapped in self-promotion, claims that she was being harassed, blaming the media, the edit, the misunderstanding. But the internet wasn't having it. "She hit a child," the comments kept saying. "She lied about it. She doubled down." Her engagement numbers tanked. Her brand sponsors stayed silent. The silence said everything. Barbara and Charles, meanwhile, obeyed the restraining order. I knew it wasn't because they suddenly respected boundaries. It was because they didn't want more backlash. I wasn't angry anymore, just finished. I had spent decades trying to earn love by being less loud, less sensitive, less me. But that door had closed, and I wasn't reaching for the handle anymore. One evening, Ivy and I sat on the floor surrounded by sketchbooks and snack wrappers, creating new designs for the shop. She looked up at me and asked, "Is this what normal feels like?" I thought for a moment. "Not just normal," I said. "This is what safe feels like." She leaned against me, pencil still in hand, and whispered, "I like it here." And I realised something I hadn't dared believe before. We were okay, not in spite of what happened, but because we chose to rise from it. A few days later, as I was answering customer emails and Ivy was at her desk drawing another fox, this one with a little crown, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something in me said, "Pick up." "Hello," I said. There was a pause. Clara came, the voice low, familiar, uncertain. It was my father. I didn't say a word. "I'm not good at this," he began. "Never have been." Another pause. "But that day in the meeting, I heard what you said, and I realised I should have said something. A long time ago." My hand gripped the phone tighter. He continued, "We hurt you. Not just now, for years. I let it happen. I didn't stop it. I need you to hear that at least once." There was a silence between us, not heavy, just still. I closed my eyes. "Thank you," I said softly, then added, "But I'm not carrying it anymore." He exhaled, almost like relief. "I understand." And then he hung up. No begging, no justifications, just the sound of a door closing. That night, I went into the hallway closet and pulled out an old photo album I hadn't touched in years. Its cover was worn, the corners bent. Inside were pages of childhood photos, birthdays, beach trips, school plays. In almost every one, Juliana stood centre frame, perfect posed. In one holiday photo, I was only half visible, hidden behind a Christmas tree, forgotten even in print. Ivy sat beside me on the couch, flipping through the pages. She pointed to that picture. "Why weren't you in more of them?" I smiled faintly, brushed a strand of her hair behind her ear. "Because they didn't see me," I said. Not the way I needed them to. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up straight into my eyes. "I see you," she said. And just like that, something inside me healed. I hugged her tightly and let the tears come, not because I was broken, but because I was finally free. The next morning, I packed the photo album into a cardboard box and slid it into the back of the closet. Not to erase the past, not out of hate, just to make room for what we were building. For who we were becoming. A few weeks later, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I booked a trip. Just the two of us. No obligations. No fake smiles, no holiday guilt or dinner tables with landmines hiding under polite conversation. Just me and Ivy, a new chapter. I chose Sedona, Arizona. It had been a dream of mine for years. I don't know why something about the red rock cliffs, the silence, the wide open sky. I had always wanted to go, but always found an excuse not to. Not this time. We stayed in a tiny cedar cabin nestled just beneath the cliffs. No neighbours, no noise, no expectations, just us. During the day, Ivy ran through the trails collecting stones and pointing out clouds that looked like dinosaurs. At night, we sat wrapped in blankets on the porch, sipping cocoa and tracing constellations with our fingers. No phones, no trending hashtag, no memories we didn't choose to carry. Just wind, stars, and peace. One evening, as the sun turned the desert gold and shadows stretched long across the rocks, Ivy leaned against me on a wooden bench. "Do you think they miss us?" she asked. I didn't pretend not to know who she meant. "Maybe," I said, "but missing someone doesn't mean they were good to you." She nodded slowly. "Thought about that." Then she asked, "Will we ever see them again?" I took a breath. "Maybe," I answered truthfully, "but not if it means we have to shrink to fit into their world." She was quiet, letting the words settle like sand. Then she looked up at the sky and said, "I like our world better." "So do I whispered, and I meant it. That night, under a blanket of stars, I realised something. I didn't just walk away from a rooftop party. I walked away from a legacy of silence. I walked away from the idea that I had to be perfect to be worthy. I walked into something bigger. A life where my daughter knew she mattered. A life where I finally knew I did too. And the best part, it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The weeks after our trip to Sedona passed in a kind of quiet momentum. Not the chaotic rush I used to live in, but a gentle kind of progress. The kind where the world doesn't spin you, you walk through it on your own feet. Ivy returned to school, and her teachers welcomed her back with softness I hadn't expected. One even pulled me aside to say she's more confident. Whatever you're doing, it's working. At home, the shop blossomed. What started as a tiny Etsy page became a small but thriving business. Cersei plus Art du Studio turned into something more than a store. It became a space for others like us, single mums, grieving parents, kids trying to find their voices. They wrote messages on our order notes, sent photos of our prints on nursery walls and classroom doors. This quote helped my daughter after her dad passed. "My son won't sleep without the Brave Fox sticker by his bed." One day, a message popped up in our inbox from a woman named Natalie, a program director at a nationwide children's advocacy nonprofit. She had seen Ivy's video and had since been following our designs. "We're hosting an annual summit for child trauma recovery," she wrote. "We'd love to feature your art." I blinked at the message, stunned. They wanted to use Ivy's drawings, her superhero foxes, her "I see you" line for a healing toolkit to be distributed nationwide. They would pay, of course, but more importantly, they wanted her voice, her resilience, her story. I sat Ivy down and read the email aloud. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Do you think it'll help other kids?" I nodded. "I think it already has." She grinned. "Okay, but only if Brave Fox gets his own colouring book." We shook on it like business partners. A few days later, a padded envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small hardcover book wrapped in brown paper. I unwrapped it to find a photo album. The pages were glossy, professionally printed. I flipped through it slowly. Photo after photo of Ivy. Laughing, dancing, reading, painting, holding her fox plush in different stages of wear. Each photo had a small caption in neat handwriting, dates, memories, quotes. At the end was a single note folded neatly. "She reminds me of you, brave, observant, and quietly powerful. I missed it the first time around, but I see it now. I hope someday you'll believe it too. E." My eyes filled with tears. Eleanor. She had gone through our family photos, the ones I'd boxed up, the ones I didn't have the strength to curate. She'd made something beautiful out of them, something that focused not on who wasn't there, but who was. Fall settled into California slowly, cooler mornings, golden light stretching longer into the evenings. Ivy started bringing home more drawings from school, a fox giving a speech at a podium, a bunny holding a protest sign that read, "Be kind." One night, while we were packing sticker sets, she looked up and asked, "Do you think I'm famous now?" I smiled, a little. "Do you think Aunt Juliana's still mad?" I paused, probably. She thought about that, then said, "Do you think she learned anything?" That question, it lingered like smoke. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I hope so." And it was true. Not for her, but for the sake of everyone she hadn't hurt yet. In early November, the nonprofit hosted their summit in San Diego. They invited us as special guests. I hesitated at first. Public events still triggered old anxiety. But when they said Ivy's artwork would be the centerpiece of the children's exhibit, I couldn't say no. The conference center buzzed with warmth. People from all over the country, educators, social workers, psychologists, parents. They came not to debate, but to heal. When we walked into the children's wing, Ivy gasped. Her drawings had been enlarged and placed along the walls like a gallery. "Brave fox, safe place, big feelings are not bad, I see you." One little girl stood beneath a poster of the fox, with a cape staring up with wide eyes. Her mother knelt beside her, pointing to the words. "This is the one who spoke out," she whispered. This fox helped her feel brave. Ivy clutched my hand. I bent down and whispered, "That's your fox." She blinked hard, nodded, then walked over and handed the girl a sticker from her backpack. No words, just connection. That afternoon, I gave a small talk. I hadn't planned it, but one of the coordinators asked if I'd say a few words. I stood in front of a modest room full of people who had lived through things no one should. And for the first time, I didn't script my feelings. I just told the truth. I used to think staying quiet protected peace, I said. But all it did was protect the people who hurt us. The day my daughter got slapped in front of a room full of people was the day I stopped being silent. And the moment she chose to tell her story was the moment everything began to change. Not just for her, but for me. There was no applause, just stillness and tears. And afterward, people lined up not to congratulate me, but to thank me. Not for the speech, but for the permission. Permission to speak. To feel, to rise. When we got home, our mailbox was full. Orders, letters, a small package from someone in Idaho who had written, "My son drew a cape on your fox and now sleeps through the night. Thank you for being brave." It wasn't a business anymore. It was a movement, one quiet voice at a time. Then, on an otherwise uneventful Thursday, an envelope arrived addressed to Ivy. I frowned, unfamiliar handwriting. I opened it cautiously, unsure if it would be a backlash, a guilt trap, a ploy. Instead, it was a short note. "Dear Ivy, I watched the video. I didn't say anything then, and I should have. I wish I had stood up." I froze. "I was scared of your aunt, but I saw you, and I'm sorry I didn't help. You made me braver. I spoke up about something at my school last week because of you. Thank you." Lena, I sat near the cake table that night. Ivy read it once, then folded it gently and placed it inside her sketchbook. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Her silence wasn't fear anymore. It was strength. That night after she fell asleep, I sat on the couch alone, watching the city lights blur into soft halos outside our window. Everything had changed. And yet the bones of our life, our routines, our dinners, our Sunday movie nights were the same. But we were different. We were rooted. And I knew that no matter what came next, we weren't going back. Ever. One weekend, Ivy and I visited the beach. Just the two of us. No big plans. Just sandwiches, a towel, and the sound of waves. She dug in the sand, sculpting a fox den with twigs and shells. I sat nearby, sketching a design for a new print. A small girl standing on a mountaintop cape, fluttering arms raised, and the words, "You're not too little to change everything." She peeked at it and nodded approvingly. I asked, "Do you think the world is getting better?" She thought for a long time, then said, "It depends who's talking." I smiled. "And who's listening?" She added, "That's why we draw." Simple as that. That night we framed that drawing and placed it over the front door. A reminder, not of what we'd lost, but of what we chose. And the next morning, as Ivy packed her lunch and grabbed her sketch pad, I knew we weren't just survivors. We were storytellers. We were builders. We were the storm and the shelter. And this life, this strange, imperfect, beautiful life, it was finally ours. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the skies hang low and grey, like they're too tired to cry. Ivy had just returned from school and was sprawled on the rug, building a castle out of pencils and erasers, narrating a story under her breath about a fox queen who ruled with kindness. I was answering customer emails when another one came in. The subject line was simple: media inquiry, CBS Morning Spotlight. I blinked. For a moment I thought it was spam. Then I opened it. It was real. A senior producer from CBS had seen Ivy's video followed the evolution of our shop and had a proposition. They were preparing a feature on Voices of Change, an episode profiling people who turned personal pain into public impact. They wanted to include us. Ivy's voice, the producer wrote, cut through the noise. We believe her story is not just powerful, it's necessary. I stared at the screen for a long time. Necessary. That word sat on my tongue like a stone. Part of me wanted to say no. We had worked so hard to reclaim peace. The thought of opening it all up again, the trauma, the scrutiny, the questions terrified me. But then I looked at Ivy. She wasn't the same little girl from the party. She had changed, grown, not harder, not colder, just more rooted in her own skin. I read the email aloud. She was quiet for a minute, then said, "Will I have to talk on camera? Only if you want to." Another pause. Then she said, "Only if I can draw while I talk." That weekend, we drove to the CBS studio in a borrowed sedan. I wore a blazer I hadn't touched in years, and Ivy wore her new fox print dress with leggings and her favourite sneakers. She had drawn 3 new posters the night before, one of a fox holding a microphone, one of a child surrounded by stars, and one with big, bold letters: "Listen loudly." The studio was colder than I expected and brighter. Cameras, cords, lattes in paper cups. But the team was warm, gentle, patient. The interview wasn't dramatic. No gotcha questions, no spin. They let us speak. I talked about silence, about what it does to children, about what it did to me. I thought being quiet was love, I said. I thought swallowing pain meant I was keeping the peace. But the truth is, peace without justice is just performance. Ivy taught me that. When Ivy spoke, she didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She held up her drawing and said, "This is Brave Fox. He speaks up even when it's scary. He reminds me that being small doesn't mean being powerless." You could hear a pin drop. The segment aired 2 weeks later. I didn't tell anyone in advance, not even Maya. We just watched it quietly from our couch, curled together in our blanket cocoon. It was short, only 7 minutes, but it told the story simply, honestly. No sensationalism. No dramatic music, just Ivy's voice, our art, our truth. By the next morning, the shop had over 3,000 new orders. Emails flooded in, messages from mothers, teachers, teenage girls, even a 74-year-old retired nurse who wrote, "I never stood up to my father." Watching Ivy did something to me I didn't know I needed. It wasn't fame. It was something deeper. It was connection. And yet, not everyone was happy. A week later, a letter arrived from Barbara and Charles. Not an email, a real physical letter. Thick cardstock, elegant handwriting, no return address. Inside were 3 sentences. We saw the segment. Enough is enough. This is not the legacy we raised you to carry forward. Please reconsider the damage you're doing to the family name. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just control wrapped in concern. I sat at the kitchen table and laughed. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was the sound of finally understanding that their love came with strings I'd spent my whole life trying to untangle. I threw the letter in the recycling bin and poured myself a second cup of coffee. Legacy, they said. This was my legacy now. Later that week, we got a call from Natalie, the program director, at the non-profit that had supported Ivy's art. "We'd love for you to speak at our national summit next year," she said. "And there's something else." She paused. "We're launching an initiative for children who've experienced public trauma. We want to name it after Ivy. The Ivy Project." I covered the mouthpiece of the phone for a moment. Ivy was in the other room humming as she painted tiny fox paw prints on a canvas tote. When I uncovered the phone, I whispered, "She would be honoured." That night, I told Ivy over dinner. She didn't say anything at first, just kept eating her pasta. Then she looked up and said, "I hope they give every kid a fox plushie." I promised I'd make it happen. Time passed. The internet moved on as it always does. Other stories trended. Other voices rose. But something stayed. Orders still came in, not like a flood, more like a steady rain. Enough to keep us busy, enough to feel purposeful, enough to keep the lights on and the dreams alive. And every once in a while, a message would arrive from a stranger saying, "Ivy helped me say what I couldn't." That was the legacy we were building. Not perfection, not influence, just truth. Just the reminder that a 10-year-old girl with a fox and a voice could change the world one whisper at a time. One afternoon, Ivy came home from school with a notebook filled with writing. "I'm working on a book," she announced, "about Brave Fox." I smiled. "Oh, what kind of book?" "It's called The Day Brave Fox Got Small Again. It's about how even brave people feel scared sometimes, but they still try anyway." I looked at her amazed, and suddenly I wasn't looking at the girl who had been slapped in a ballroom full of strangers. I was looking at a girl who turned that moment into something luminous. A girl who had been hurt and healed. A girl who saw herself as a storyteller, as a teacher, as someone worth listening to. That night, I sat at my desk after Ivy had gone to sleep. The apartment was quiet. A candle flickered beside me. The photo album from Eleanor sat open beside my laptop, Ivy's smile frozen in a dozen joyful frames. I began typing, not for a blog, not for press, just for us. A letter. To the little girl I used to be. "I'm sorry they didn't see you. I'm sorry you learnt to whisper. But look at us now. We are loud. We are honest. We are whole. And best of all, we are free." I saved the file, named it Legacy Real One. And when I went to bed, I didn't just feel tired. I felt whole. A year passed. One quiet, extraordinary year. In that time, Ivy's drawings evolved from simple foxes to entire worlds. Little forests filled with animals standing up for each other. Foxes holding court under moonlight, bunnies delivering speeches about kindness. Even raccoons hosting emotional literacy workshops on picnic blankets. But more than her sketches changed, she did. There was a steadiness in her now, a confidence not born of pride, but of peace. She knew who she was, and I did too. The online shop was steady, still growing. Our evenings were filled with sticker packs, colouring kits, warm tea, and the occasional whispered brainstorming about Ivy's new book project, The Day Brave Fox Got Small Again. One day, a small press publishing company reached out. They'd seen her concept on our site. They wanted to help her finish it, edit it, publish it, distribute it to school counsellors and trauma centres across the country. They wanted her to be the author. Ivy was sitting cross-legged on the floor when I told her. "Like my name on the cover?" she asked wide-eyed. "Your name," I said, "and your story." She looked down at her stuffed fox, the one she'd been clutching since the night of the party, and whispered, "Do you think Brave Fox is proud of me?" I wrapped her in my arms. "I think Brave Fox is you." A few months later, the first copies of the book arrived. Small, hardcover editions with soft matte covers and Ivy's signature fox on the front, holding a tiny flag that said, "It's okay to feel small, you're still brave." We had a little launch party in our apartment. Maya came. Eleanor brought cupcakes with tiny icing foxes. Ivy signed copies with sparkly markers. And in one quiet corner of the table sat a single framed quote, "Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you choose to pass on." Then one day an envelope arrived, cream-coloured, perfume-scented. I knew that kind of paper. Inside was an invitation. "You are invited to the annual Sky Lounge Rooftop Gala, a night of influence. No, send a name." But I didn't need one. The event was tied to Juliana's former PR firm and networking gala for influencers, media partners, and online personalities. I'd never received an invitation before. But now we were someone. I sat with the envelope for an hour. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want confrontation. But something inside me whispered go. Not to fight. To close the loop. To choose how the story ends. I didn't RSVP. I just showed up. The rooftop hadn't changed. Still glass and jazz and skyline views. Still whispers wrapped in cologne and curated laughter. But this time, I wasn't invisible. Heads turned, but not in judgment. in recognition. "Are you the woman from the video?" one woman whispered as I passed. Another smiled. "My daughter keeps Brave Fox under her pillow." I nodded politely, gratefully. Then I saw her. Juliana, standing by the bar. She was thinner than I remembered, older somehow. Her smile was dimmer, like a light she could no longer fake. She turned, saw me. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't approach. Neither did I. That was the power of healing. You stop needing permission to leave pain behind. Instead, I walked to the far end of the rooftop, stood by the glass railing, and looked out at the city. A voice broke the silence beside me. "You came." I turned. It was Grant, dressed simply. No chai, no cameras. He looked different too, lighter. "I heard you might be here," he said. "I just wanted to say I never forgot." "Any of it?" "I know," I replied. "You didn't have to come. I wanted to." He looked down. "I got involved with a nonprofit recently," he said. "They help young men break cycles of silence and image obsession." I guess I had some things to unlearn. I smiled. We all did. Then he handed me something. A folded check. I shook my head. "No, it's not charity," he said. "It's a partnership for the Ivy Project." I saw the numbers. "You're helping more people than most $10,000 a plate charities ever will. Let me help grow that." I looked at the check again, and this time I accepted it. Not because we needed the money, but because we were ready to expand our reach. Back home, Ivy was asleep when I returned. Her sketchbook was still open on her desk, a new drawing half finished, a fox hugging a lion, both wearing paper crowns. I kissed her forehead, tucked the blanket tighter, and stood there for a moment, just watching, just grateful. Weeks passed, then months, and with them came milestones. I never imagined Ivy's book was featured in Parents magazine. She was invited to speak virtually at a children's literacy conference. She donated all her royalties from the first run to shelters for kids in transition. She didn't want fame. She wanted impact, just like her mother. One night, as we were brushing our teeth, Ivy looked at me through the mirror and said, "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "We never needed them. We just thought we did." And she was right. 1 year to the day after the engagement party, I took Ivy back to that same rooftop. Not during an event, not to relive anything, just a quiet visit. I had called ahead, asked for 15 minutes alone. The venue manager remembered the video. He didn't ask questions. We stood by the glass railing. Ivy looked out over the lights, her hands resting on the cool edge of the marble. "This place used to feel scary," she said, "like a place I wasn't allowed to be." I looked at her. "And now," she grinned, "now it's just a room with a view." We placed one of her Brave Fox stickers on the underside of the railing. No one else would see it, but we would know. We left it there, not as a mark of rebellion, but as a quiet monument, a whisper that said, "You can hurt us, but we will speak. You can silence us, but we will draw, and we will always, always return stronger." On the ride home, Ivy rested her head against the window, watching the lights blur into stars. "Do you think they think about us?" she asked. I didn't pretend not to know who she meant. Maybe I said, "But that doesn't mean they get to come back." She nodded slowly. Then sleepily, "I don't miss them. I miss the idea of them." That's when I knew she'd healed, because missing a fantasy is different than mourning a reality. That night, I opened my laptop and began drafting a blog post, something I'd avoided for a long time. But this time, it wasn't a vent. It was a message. To every woman who was told to be quiet, to every child who was punished for existing, to every voice who whispered instead of screamed, "You are not too small to change the story. You never were. You never will be." I hit publish, closed my eyes, and smiled. We never heard from Barbara or Charles again. Not a word, not a knock, just silence, and for the first time in my life, it was the kind of silence I welcomed. No guilt, no obligation, no more shrinking to fit inside someone else's idea of family. We had made our own, one sketch at a time. The following spring, Ivy's school held a career day. She was asked what she wanted to be when she grew up. She stood in front of her class with her fox plush in one hand and said, "I want to be a truth teller, just like my mum." She didn't need applause. She didn't need approval. She just needed to say it out loud, and she did. As for me, I still design, I still write, I still package sticker sheets at midnight when Ivy falls asleep on the couch. But now when I look in the mirror, I don't just see a widow, or a black sheep, or a girl who was pushed out of the frame. I see someone who stepped back in, who told the story, who raised a child not to survive a family, but to outgrow its silence. We don't live in fear anymore. We live in freedom. And that, more than revenge, more than justice, is the real ending. Or maybe just the beginning.